Over 5 years ago, I used this book here to make a video where I took some of the awesome creature designs from in here that are creative reimaginings of mythical and Dungeons and Dragons type creatures, and I turned those into superheroes. Then, around a year later, I did a sort of spiritual sequel to that where I took D&D monsters and turned them into supervillains. Now, all these years later, I'm kind of rounding out the trilogy by going back to this book, and I'm going to take some of the awesome creatures from in here and turn them into anti-heroes. And since that D&D Monsters as Supervillains episode was the very first episode to introduce one of my original characters, Harold the Herald, as the narrator of that video, a character who was once a scout for a woman named Ahuizotl who essentially ran an interdimensional Hunger Games, I thought I'd bring him back to narrate this one, but I thought I'd work in a few other characters as well and turn this into a weird little banter episode. Since Harold the Herald is canonically locked up in the Redemption Arc Support Foundation right now, I decided that he would narrate this, then I'd have him bantering along with Arava, or Fear herself, a former demon queen who now regrets her past actions, and the man who runs the RAS Foundation, Professor Dresden Oakland, who if you're new to the channel, you probably know him as the narrator of the SCP's episodes. Though canonically he narrated those like 6,000 years ago. Is that way too much lore to dump on people right at the beginning? Maybe, but at least you have the context now. So let's get into it, shall we? Let's go. Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show.
So, Arava, in conclusion, Harold's brother, Bustar Terminax, will be coming for a visit at some point in the near future, and I believe it would be considerate for the both of us to apologize to him for our actions during our last encounter with him.
And by our actions, you mean my actions, right?
Well, I could have conducted myself more compassionately as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure. It's not like I'm getting tired of apologizing to people.
Ah, don't you worry there, little queen. Busty won't make it tough on you. He's a real forgiving guy.
You call him Busty? I don't remember him having a huge pair of knockers. Also, didn't you say he ripped your arms off once when he was mad at you?
Well, sure, but what's a couple of severed limbs between brothers, right? And I got these waggly new ones, and they're fun.
Jeez, sounds like he should be the one in here instead of you. Then again, you probably got thousands of people killed by kidnapping them for little psychotic death arenas.
Oh, come on now. I get that they were a bit on the moral dubious side, but we showed a lot of folks a good time with them. If I recall correctly, you and Prof. Oakland here had a gander at one of them yourselves in the Tussle of the Tails.
At the what?
Ah, yes, as much as I attempt to block out the memory, you and I did once attend one of Ludum's shows, while I was attempting to make an overseer's bond with one of her frequent patrons. All the contestants captured and forced to fight for their lives from across the multiverse for that event were physically empowered beings with tails, hence the name. Right you are, Professor, and yours truly was in charge of finding most of the folks to compete in that little rodeo. Which is not something you are proud of anymore, correct? Of course not. Harold's honor. Besides, I actually sorta cheated for those little games. Ludum liked for every competitor to be from a different dimension most of the time, but that time I pulled 3 folks from D749, which was a universe I went back to years later after I heard talk about some lady called the Dungeon Master, making some real impressive supervillains, ones I could wrangle up for some later games down the line. And funny enough, lots of the superpowered folks in that dimension have powers that, unbeknownst to them, is real similar to mythological monsters found or talked about in legends from other worlds. First one I planned to pull from there was good old Manticore.
You're kidding, right? A guy with, I'm assuming, powers like a Manticore was named Manticore?
Well, shoot, no, you got me. His real name was Marty Avara. Well, that is even more on the nose, so to speak, is it not? Marty Avara is the old Persian word for manticore.
And you just know that off the top of your head?
Well, old Marty was indeed a Persian feller, living in his world's America, though. He was once this sort of low-rent thug who'd work for whatever gang leader in the city was paying best. Or so he said. See, his folks had never paid him no mind, hardly even noticed when he moved out of the house at 14 to fend for himself. Even though he never liked it, Marty had gotten real used to nobody ever paying him any attention. But he eventually found that he had a natural-born knack for thieving, and that got him some attention in the crime scene in his city. He'd say that he'd take jobs for whoever was hiring, but really he was taking the ones for the mob bosses and gang leaders and whatnot, who praised him most for his work. He just wanted to cling on to any fleeting feeling he could find that someone actually cared about him or was impressed with him. This is unexpectedly heartbreaking.
Yeah, but there's no way you could know some of these details about this guy, right?
You'd be surprised how much research I do on the folks I pulled for the arena. Also, I watched him like a creeper for a good long while. Ahuizotl, eventually he took on a job for someone who was the opposite of who Marty usually went for. This guy showed him no praise whatsoever upon completion of a job. Didn't say thank you or nothing, and even seemed to show some contempt for the folks who worked for him, and for Marty in particular. But that hit something deep in Marty's subconscious, and as much as he hated it, he felt compelled to keep working for this guy until he got some kind of praise or appreciation or attention. Even ended up being willing to get experimented on for the guy. The gang leader in question went by the pseudonym Tartarius, and little did Marty know this feller was the last gang leader he'd ever worked for. Now, Tartarius was a pretty ruthless feller. He was known for capturing members from other gangs and keeping them prisoner in this old abandoned subway system to either juice their bosses for something or just keep them isolated till they went bonkers. And no matter how much folks tried to escape his jail, they could never quite get out of his clutches.
Huh, was his real name Dresden Oakland?
Thank you for that, Arava. Ah, just a friendly little jape and jab there, Prof. Well played, little queen.
Thanks.
Anyway, Tartarius was moving up in the criminal underground and wanted to build himself an army of superpowered ne'er-do-wells to work for him. He'd acquired enough dough to hire some right crooked bioengineers, and he offered a hefty sum to any of his subordinates who was willing to undergo some experimentation. Marty thought he saw a chance to impress Tartarius and leapt on it like a jackrabbit on a June bug. The doc who experimented on him used a combo of irradiated scorpion and lion DNA to alter Marty's genetic code.
Sure, science words that we can pretend make sense. Go on.
Well, I could go into more detail, but figured no sense telling you how the cow ate the cabbage. Point is, he got 3 times stronger, 7 times faster, 8 times more durable, and sprouted a real funky scorpion tail, out of which he could shoot these poison needles that could knock someone out with 1 shot or kill him dead with 3 or 4, depending on the person. He showed off this power to Tartarius, and wouldn't you know it, the man gave a brief good job to the bioengineer and just gave Marty an order to go out on a job. No appreciation shown for taking the risk to get experimented on. Marty was real ticked, but still did as he was ordered, thinking, this time for sure I'll impress him. Marty did a few jobs, robbing other gangs, capturing some high-ranking tough guys, even took on some superpowered ones who gave Marty a run for his money, and while Marty was being a significant asset, still no praise. And worse still, a bunch of other supergoons were getting their own power puff up, so he wasn't gonna be the toughest under Tartarius' employ for long. Powers had already been given to this new feller Azo, who will come up later.
How did this guy not get that Tartarius was never gonna appreciate him? How smooth-brained can you be?
Well, often our subconscious is drawn to what's familiar, not what's actually good for us, and if you ain't aware of that, you can keep compulsively going back to things that are bad for you to feel that false sense of safety that comes with familiarity, even when it really ain't good for you.
Sometimes you say stuff that makes it hard to believe you spent years working for an insane psychopath.
Arava, we endeavor to never use the terms insane or psychopath at the Foundation as casual insults.
Why, because of all the insane psychopaths here?
Correct.
Alright, sorry.
Anyhow, Marty finally hit his breaking point when Tartarius gave him an order to go and kidnap the son of this rogue agent sort of super gal called Baku. She didn't exactly look like one in the traditional sense, but she had powers real similar to a Chinese/Japanese folklore critter called the Baku. They're like these elephant, rhino, tiger, cow sorts of things that feed on folks' dreams. They can be called in to consume nightmares too, but calling one in to do that is risky, cause it might just keep on eating and eating and eating until it devours your hopes and ambitions as well. Bakula's powers was right in that sort of vein. She could feed on folks' dreams while they slept, but also if someone was daydreaming and wasn't aware of her being nearby, she could feed on them then too, usually leaving them pretty dazed and confused. If she fed on them long enough, they could even spend a few days acting outright insane, cuckoo bonkers. The effort is appreciated, Harold. Go on. Anyway, once she feeds on the minds of others, her own physical powers will manifest for a while. Stronger the more she's fed. She sprouts a big old tail, claws, can float on the wind, and shoot clouds of this red mist that make folks other than her right dizzy, and is usually pretty good for making escapes. Of course, that ain't no good if she's asleep in her own house. Tartarius had gotten some folks to track down where Bakula lived, seeing as how she had taken it upon herself to go after some of Tartarius' top brass and bring them into the police. See, she may be a soup for hire, but she's got her own code too, and wouldn't abide any of the gangs getting too violent or getting too big for their britches. Marty tried to convince Tartarius that he could bring her in, not her kid, but Tartarius wasn't having it. He wanted to send a real clear message. But being sent to kidnap a 3-year-old kid was finally enough to snap Marty out of his impressing obsession stupor to realize Tartarius wasn't a particularly nice feller to work for. Well shoot, look at you getting all the way to this part of the video. You know, there's over 700 videos like this one on the channel, with more coming up every week. So I reckon if you ain't subscribed yet, it's in your best interest to do that. Or even to leave a suggestion for other stuff Pop could turn into superheroes or whatever else you like. Heck, there's even a video like this coming up on Monday, but where he's fusing together subscriber-submitted heroes and villains. And the next subscriber redraw theme will be announced in that video, for you to participate in if you're so inclined. And if you're really liking what you're seeing here, you might want to even grab one of PopCross's coloring books or illustrated novels from his Amazon or Blurb bookstores.
Harold, did he black out with his eyes open or something?
Whoops, they're calling me back to the canonical realm, so it's time to heat up the bricks. Links to the bookstores are in the description, and I'll see you on the other side. Now, Marty decided right quick he wasn't gonna take no kiddo, but there was a problem. Tartarius made him wear this funky-looking eyeball helmet with a camera in it on jobs, so he could see what Marty was cooking. If he did anything other than the mission, Tartarius would know about it. So, the day before he was supposed to do the job, good old Marty went on down to Bakula's place without the helmet, planning to break in through the window and just have a little chat with her.
He had to break into her house for a chat? He couldn't just knock on the door?
Well, he probably figured someone might have been watching the door to her building. Unfortunately, there was also someone watching the window. She had a 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of this place on the wrong side of the river. Was just her and the kiddo, as the daddy had bit the bullet working for... Any guesses? The only gang leader you've told us the name of is Tartarius, so it turns to reason
Someone else. Some random person we don't know.
Bingo! It was a trick question. Good catch there, little queen.
I'm smarter than you, Dresden.
You are entitled to believe that if you wish, Arava. Anyway, Marty sneaks up to her window, but before he can even bust in, this big watery claw shoots up and snatches him off the wall. He gets yanked down into the river next to the building, and that feller I mentioned earlier, Aizo, starts trying to drown him. See, it turns out Aizo had worked his way up in Tartarius' ranks just so he could get given superpowers, then planned to use them to take the big boss down. He figured all the shady stuff he'd have to do under the dubious feller's employ to work his way up the ranks would be balanced out by the good he'd get to do with the powers once he got them. He heard Marty was going to be sent after a kid, and he was drawing a line there too. He had the same sort of thought as Marty to go warn Bakula, but when he saw Marty there, he thought Marty was just moving in early, hence their little kerfuffle in the water.
Okay, but what are this Azo guy's powers besides some kind of water claw?
Oh, right, sorry about that. See, he's basically got the powers of an Aztec mythical critter called an Ahuizotl. They're these hound-like critters that live in the water, got a human hand at the end of their tail, and drag folks into the water to drown them. Aizo got some elevated speed and strength, and could also swim like the dickens. He could breathe underwater, and could expand even the tiniest amount of water into a tail claw for himself to use to grab and swipe at folks.
So he's got Aztec monster powers and fights with fluids that come out of his butt? Wasted opportunity if his superhero name isn't Montezuma's Revenge.
That is somewhat juvenile, Arava, but also quite clever.
Wow, you laugh now? That's new.
Well, that is indeed right clever, little queen, but this Azo feller took himself a little too serious to name himself after Traveler's Diarrhea. He had a real Batman sort of attitude, but without really having earned that yet. Is Batman a reference y'all get?
No.
I am familiar, and we actually have a variant of Bruce Wayne as a patient at the Foundation. Really? I reckon I'd like to meet him. Trust me, you would not. Not yet, anyhow. Alrighty, if you say so. Anyhow, Marty and Azo eventually work out that they are both thinking along the same track. So they both meet up with Bakula and propose a little team-up. The 3 of them working together should be enough to take down Tartarius. Bakula wasn't much of a team player, but since these fellers was risking their lives to help protect her kid, she got on board. She left the kid at her sister's place, let her powers fade enough so that her tail disappeared, then she could disguise herself to get into the big boss's base with her new 2 buddies. The 3 of them made it in, and wouldn't you know it, Tartarius wasn't so tough to beat, since he'd been too afraid to get experimented on to get any powers himself. Marty knocked him out with one of his venomous needles, Azo distracted his goons, and Bakula fed on his dreams enough to power herself right up. Then she finished him off, and they all tried to get out of there. But Tartarius had already powered up a bunch of other goons who got onto the scene right quick. Them and a bunch of other regular powered goons with guns showed up, so our little trio was basically facing down an army to get out of there. Like I said, escaping Tartarius was no simple feat, even after he kicked the bucket. Which is why I swooped in and ported the 3 of them out of there to Ms. Ludum's arena.
Wait, you were just there watching all this?
Watching like a creeper, like I said. I'd gotten invested in these folks, so I pulled all 3 of them out and just convinced Ludum it was cause they all had tails and would all be great fits for the competition, even if they was all from the same dimension. She wasn't thrilled about it, but she accepted it. Well, on the one hand, that is a compassionate thing for you to have done, getting them away from a dangerous situation. But you also still took them to an arena to fight to the death, including the mother of a young child. Although, if I recall correctly, this was a rare case in which Eloise allowed 2 competitors to leave. Right you are there, Professor. See, I may or may not have slipped a little suggestion to Mr. Marty. I told him there was only supposed to be 1 person allowed to leave this little competition, but really all Ludum was looking for is a good show for the crowd. So if he wanted to get himself and his new buddies out of there, he just had to give the crowd a reason to want them all free.
Surprisingly noble for someone who once put a rabid gorilla on a bus full of children.
Yeah, I had my moments for the better and worse. Unfortunately, Azo didn't make it to the end of the line, but he did die protecting Marty and Bakula, and dying a hero was pretty well the way he would have wanted to go out. Then Marty and Bakula finished off the only other competitor, leaving just them. Then Marty took my advice and he pulled an actual Hunger Games.
A what?
He kissed Bakula, pretty convincingly professing his love to her and saying that if she died, he died, and there'd be no winner, which would be real unsatisfying. The crowd cheered him on, so Ludum decided to throw 5 more monsters into the arena, and if they killed them all together, they both got to get out of there. And those 2 tail-swinging gems pulled it off, and they both got to go home. I checked in on him a little while later, and that fake love actually ended up becoming real love. They had ended up becoming a couple. And the love and attention Marty now gets from Bakula and her kiddo is all the attention he'll ever need to be happy. That sounds more like an unhealthy dependence on his partner than true self-sustaining happiness.
Oh, shut up. It's a cute ending. Let's pour one out for Mr. Buttwater and just be happy for the people who lived.
I know I've done this before, but can we just take a moment to look at how I used to draw buildings? And just regard the hilarious shift in quality between then and now? Anyway, if you enjoyed this, you might want to go back to the D&D Supervillains episode narrated by Harold the Herald, or if you want to know more context about these characters, you could check out some of my longer-running original series, like Fear of the Demon Hunters, which tells Fear herself or Arava's story of redemption, leading up to how she got into the Redemption Arc Support Foundation, or the Trismegistus Academy, which Harold doesn't play a big role in, but his old boss, Eloise Ludum, is the main villain of it. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note, and the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote that I find very comforting in confusing times, and instead of giving an explanation of it, I think I'll just say it and let you apply it to whatever situation it might resonate for. It's by a man named Coot Blackson, and he said, "Even though I don't understand what's happening right now, I trust that life will show me." I hope that's inspiring or helpful. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the community redraw on Monday. Goodbye.